Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about Emperor Palpatine for the Galactic Empire in Star Wars Legion. This is going to be another unit breakdown. So what that means is we're going to be taking a look at his unit card, talking about what he does. We'll look at his upgrades, some different ways that you can build him, and his command cards as well. And we'll be talking about certain other synergies and cards that he'll combo well with. If you are new to the game or new to the Empire faction and want to get a good primer for Emperor Palpatine, this is a good place to start. Or if you're an existing player and just want to hear my thoughts on Emperor Palpatine, this is a great way for you to sit down, relax, and let's get that discussion going. As always, I want to hear your thoughts on Emperor Palpatine. So once the video is over, if you leave me your thoughts down in the comments section, that's a great way to enter our various giveaways, plus like our 12 days of Life Day giveaways that are running all throughout December. If you want to have a chance to enter to win any of those, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. We do giveaways all the time, so if you don't win, don't worry. They're running all throughout December, and then we'll be having more next year as well. So very fun stuff. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in, starting with his unit card. Now, Emperor Palpatine has seen some changes from when he first came out. Really, it's just the points. His points are down to currently 190 right now, but those are always kind of in flux. So I don't want to get hung up on the points too much. Point being, he is very expensive. He's the most expensive unit in the game, and he is going to, he's going to be probably the most expensive unit for a long time to come. There's really not many people out there in the Star Wars galaxy that can go toe-to-toe with Emperor Palpatine, and as such, it makes sense that he is really, really expensive. Well, no, when I say the most expensive unit in the game, I'm talking about base unit cost. There are certainly other units that can take enough upgrades that put them over the 200-point mark. However, Palpatine, bare bones, is pound for pound the most expensive. He has 3 Force upgrade slots and 1 Command upgrade slot. His only weapon is Force Lightning, although it does double as a melee and as a ranged weapon, having the maximum range of 1 to 2, so not super long range. Again, that lightning doesn't shoot all the way across the battlefield, but it can be surprising in that he's a very slow character with a short range weapon, but he can still manage to get you. That weapon comes with Pierce 2 and Suppressive. He is loaded with Surge. He's got Surge to Critical and a Defensive Surge. I'll combine that with red defense dice. He has basically the best stats you can have in this game. He has 5 health and 4 courage value also, making him a fantastic commander for courage values across the board. Second only to Darth Vader, in that Darth Vader is completely fearless. Palpatine does have enough common sense to know when he's in a losing battle, but in his case, he's almost never going to panic. It's nearly impossible to get 8 suppression on him unless you have a special suppression-based build, and even then it's challenging to do so. He, of course, is a commander and has some very interesting abilities. First off, he does have Master of the Force 2. This is a really nice value, and it does kind of alter the certain Force abilities that you might take with him. He does have 3 Force abilities, and so as you're looking at upgrades to put in those slots, you can definitely take multiple Force slots that exhaust, knowing that you're going to get 2 ready again every single turn, which is very useful. He is also immune to Pierce, like most Jedi and Sith are, and he comes with Entourage Imperial Royal Guards. Now, the Entourage is a really cool ability, and he was the first unit to bring that into the game. What this means is that you get to bring an extra Imperial Royal Guard into your build. Now, normally, since Imperial Royal Guard are special forces, under normal list building rules, you can only have 3 special forces in your list, whether they are Scout Troopers, Royal Guards, or Death Troopers, or any other type of special force. You can only have 3. The Entourage ability allows you to bypass that and add 1 additional, so you can potentially have 4 special forces. However, I want to keep in mind that considering the point cost of Emperor Palpatine, it's unlikely that you'll actually get 4 special forces in most competitive lists, because that is an awful lot of points and doesn't leave enough points left over to really put some meaningful upgrades that you would otherwise want to have. But it still can potentially happen. There are a few builds out there that will use those 4 special forces. There's just not too many. The more important aspect of Entourage Imperial Royal Guards is that in addition to having that extra Royal Guard unit available, you're also able to issue a free order to a Royal Guard at range 1 to 2 at the start of each command phase. So very cool stuff, or during each command phase. That's a bigger deal because that means there's less special forces in your pile, and you have a little bit better control. Plus, having face-up orders and just being able to know when you're going to activate your Royal Guard is a good thing. It's generally always a good thing. So, Entourage Royal Guard is pretty nice for that. It's also good for future-proofing Emperor Palpatine in case we get more special forces that come out that maybe come out in a cheaper point range, and now all of a sudden you're more incentivized to run 4 special forces, or if Emperor Palpatine ever gets included in a special forces heavy battle force, that could potentially play interesting synergies with a battle force in the future as well. So it's important to know how that works, because it's an ability that will have longevity into the future as more and more battle forces come out. But his most important ability at the top there is pulling the strings. This is Emperor Palpatine playing the puppet master of all of the units on the battlefield, and here he is going to use one of his actions to choose a friendly trooper at range 1 to 2. That unit may perform a free action, an attack action, or a move action. So it can be can't be any action that they have. It can either be a free attack action or free move action. Now, this is a massively powerful ability. Giving somebody else the ability to attack outside of their normal attack is really, really big. And the fact that it's an attack action or a move action means that it kind of fits. Other things fit under the umbrella of attack actions that wouldn't fit unnecessarily under the umbrella of a free attack or a free move or a speed X move. A free move action, for example, can trigger things that happen after a move action, such as charge or steady or relentless. And a free attack action also allows you to do other things like, for example, if anybody who has an attack that has extra keywords built into that attack, things like arsenal, Boba Fett, for example, who happens to play his flamethrower and has an extra weapon and has got Arsenal 2 and is in a perfect position, but he already activated and moved and shot and got all these guys and killed all his bad guys. Well, now you can be like, hey, well, you have that weapon this whole turn, right? Palpatine happens to get close enough to you to hit pulling the strings again, and then all of a sudden you still have that same weapon. So it's really good for those bounty hunters that have command cards with extra special weapons and things like that. So Arsenal 2, really cool, or maybe we'll see Arsenal higher than that. Anybody who's got a really, really powerful attack that really wants to make use of it, you get to do stuff like that. Now, because pulling the strings is not an attack action in and of itself, it means that Emperor Palpatine can have a very, very heavy firepower turn if he's already in position. So if Palpatine, for example, is close enough to attack somebody and then also to do pulling the strings, then you can have 2 attacks happen during his activation, which is very, very strong. But it's also nice because it gives somebody a free move. And again, different things happen after move actions, but also move actions can make or break the game when it comes to objectives. So he's great if you've got a speed 3 unit, again, like Boba Fett, for example. You can grab an objective and potentially move away at speed 3. Pulling the strings doesn't have any kind of particular mention of, as long as they don't have an objective token. He's like, no, I paid 200 points for Emperor Palpatine. I'm going to get a free move out of somebody with him, which is pretty cool. It's great for getting other people into position. It's also great for having them get to safety, and that's one of the things that it can do. So it's very pretty flexible in the amount of things that it can do, and that's a pretty good thing. Now, we're going to talk about a couple of other things, but before I do, I want to thank today's sponsor, Luxury Playstyle. Folks, we're getting close to holiday time. If you are looking for great gifts for your loved ones or yourself, to stick in those stockings, nothing goes into a stocking better than amazing full metal tokens from Luxury Playstyle. These are absolutely gorgeous. They're double-sided. You are going to love them. There's lines completely compatible with Star Wars Legion. Head over there and check them out. Also, if you use code Crabbok VIP while you're there, you're going to save 15% off of your order. Orders that spend $35 or more that use that code are going to get a free Crabbok token thrown in. It's got the lightsaber nunchucks on there, and it's got the 5 on the back for high damage counters. Very cool stuff, and you might need that for all the damage that Emperor Palpatine is going to be putting out. Let's go ahead and talk about his command cards next. Emperor Palpatine is got very good command cards. We're going to start with maybe his least good, and that's his 3-pip and entire Legion. And this is no slouch. By calling it his least good, that doesn't mean that it's not a bad. That doesn't mean that it's a bad card. It just means that it's less impressive than everything else. Now, an entire Legion, it doesn't have any special effects to it. It's a 3-pip that activates each eligible unit. Eligible, in other words, they have to be able to receive an order, which means they have to be within what is typically normal range 3 of him. Of course, there can be different missions and different requirements that change who's an eligible unit. There are battle cards that shrink the range in which people can issue orders. There's different status effects and things like that can happen. But basically, you're giving everybody an order. And if you do have somebody that is outside of range, well, you give everybody else an order, then you pull from the pile and you get the person that's outside of range, like speeder bikes or something like that. But this one is a very, very useful card because it gives you full battlefield control. It doesn't give you any extra bells and whistles, and doesn't give you any extra perks and nothing, no kind of uber combo stuff, but it puts a lot of face-up order tokens out there. This one is pretty straightforward. I do happen to like this one with shore troopers and things that where you have your little turrets and your mortars, and they're going to do fire support and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool. Also, cool things that you can do with it. But on its own, it's really just a basic card. Moving forward, his 2-pip, Give Into Your Anger, is where the cards get more complex. And this is a very interesting card. And I would say, once upon a time, I'd say this was the best command card in all of Star Wars Legion. Easily one of the most powerful. Now, it's a 2-pip, and it only gives Emperor Palpatine an order. So initially on the power levels, it's a little falling behind because most 2-pips give out 2 orders, and this one only gives out 1. But don't worry, don't judge it right there because it becomes more and more powerful. It says before, and keep in mind also, if you've got Palpatine, you also got Entourage, and you're giving an Imperial Royal Guard a free order token. So you're already going to have 2 out there already, but that goes without saying. It says before an opponent would activate their first unit, you may choose an enemy trooper unit. If you do, your opponent must activate that unit instead. Assign it an order token from its order pool unless it has a face-up order token. At the end of the unit's activation, if it did not perform an attack, it gains 4 suppression tokens. So I say this used to be one of the most powerful cards in the game. It's still very, very powerful because you're basically taking control of your opponent. You're saying, no, you're not going to activate that Luke Skywalker. You're actually going to activate that Rebel Trooper that's all the way in the corner. And it's going to be kind of a wasted activation. You basically get to pick any trooper that you want and have them activate it. It's great for a number of reasons. Now, the old play, under the old rules, before Atomic Mass Games changed the rules on panic and suppression, this used to be very, very dangerous because it would potentially, a unit that was in the far corner of the board would run the risk of panicking and running off the board. And if you chose them, then your opponent would have to activate them. They're probably not in range to shoot. That was the play, is you would pick somebody who doesn't have any shots. Then they'd have 4 suppression tokens, and then the following turn, there was a very real chance that they could panic and run away. And so that would kind of force your opponent to have to say, well, I'm going to run them to the very center of the board so that they don't run away. And then that probably puts them out of position or away from the objective that they were trying to babysit or something like that, and opening them up to sniper fire and all kinds of different things like that. And that's how you used to play this card. And I put that in there because there may be some people that have been using it that way. And I want to bring that up to kind of compare it to how you might run it today. So now, if somebody gets 4 suppression tokens and then they panic, they just lose an activation. So it's not as big of a deal. But it depends on the objective. If you're running something like moisture evaporators and you've got somebody that their whole purpose was just to get the 1 moisture evaporator, well, this can cause them to miss out on a turn, especially if you have a very fast unit that may be coming around to them, like a speeder bike or a Mandalorian or somebody, speed 3. this kind of can slow that unit down, give them enough suppression tokens that they might lose their activation and not be able to get into safety or get into heavy cover or to be able to shoot your unit that's coming for them. So that's good. Or if you have snipers or units with infiltrate or something like that have deployed near a remote unit, you can use this to have your unit completely hiding out of line of sight. Play this card, force that unit to either move to an unfavorable position, or try to have them just risk hoping that they can rally, and maybe they lose a whole activation, and then you get the jump on them. So it's a little more strategic to how you want to play it now. Other options are maybe you activate somebody's commander that they now all of a sudden have to activate first, and now, like, especially if it's like a Luke Skywalker, maybe I do want you to activate Luke Skywalker on this turn because I want him to be totally off the board for the rest of this long round, because I don't want you saving your biggest unit until last. I want you activating your biggest unit first, so then I can respond to it with everything else that I've got. And that's the other way that you'll probably use it now. And that's still very, very good. It's just a lot more tactical. It's a lot more like chess as opposed to how it used to be a little more checkers. It used to be like kind of easier on how you wanted to run it. Now you have to be a lot more deliberate in how you run this card. But still, it's very, very strong, especially when it comes to telling your opponent who they're going to activate first. And it's very, very nice to be able to do that. Moving on to his 1-pip. This is his ultimate nuclear bomb, Death Lotus or Death Blossom. This is the card that most people think of when we talk about putting Palpatine on the table, and the biggest threats that he represents. Granted, his 2-pip is pretty strategically desirable, and pulling the strings is very, very strong. But this is the card, and now you will die, that's usually what you say when you play it. It's an incredibly good card. It says, during Emperor Palpatine's activation, he may suffer a wound and gain a suppression token to perform an attack. He may do this any number of times. After Emperor Palpatine performs an attack, the defender gains an immobilize token. So this card is very, very interesting. What it's going to do is it is going to let you kind of kill everything within a 2-meter bubble. He has he's going to have a basic attack that he gets to do normally, and he's also going to be able to move normally. This is one of those times where you pop burst of speed, get into position, and then a range 2 bubble is really big because that's 2 from him. So it's basically a range 4 circle, with him at the center of it, which most of the time can hit everything that at least he has line of sight on, which is pretty incredible. Now, granted, it doesn't, you could still get heavy cover from it, but it's also going to shut them down because they get immobilized tokens for this. So basically, the way this works, you play this card, you move Palpatine, you do your normal attack action. Possibly. Sometimes you might want to pulling the strings, but when you're doing this, you're going to attack with Palpatine on everybody and everything. And then you take a wound and do another attack. So that's your second attack. Then you take another wound and do another attack. And then you take another wound. And then basically, once you have 4 wounds on him, you stop. Because if you take that 5th wound, he instantly dies. And you certainly don't want to do that. This is slightly changed based on the existing current rule set, because of the fact that if for some reason your opponent is running a suppression heavy build, and let's just say you had a lot of suppression on Palpatine. For example, let's say you were suppressed. Let's say you had 4 or more suppression on Emperor Palpatine. Let's say you had 5, and you attack with your normal action. Or maybe you probably would have to move with your normal action to get into position. When you take the damage and take the immobile, and you take the suppression token to do this, as soon as you take an 8th suppression token, that puts you at double your value, and you would be panicked. Your activation would instantly end. So if you had too much suppression, you wouldn't be able to really make that much use out of this card. However, it's so unlikely, and you're going to rally first. So you'd probably have to have something like 8 suppression on you at the beginning, and then roll your dice, and then to still be suppressed, you probably have to have like 6, 7, or 8. I think would be the most likely thing. Anything less than that, and you can still do it as much to your heart's content until you're about to die. So very, very strong card. Really great ace in the hole. And anytime you can run this and take out most of your opponent's army, chances are you're going to take out more than 200 points worth, and that's the whole goal with Palpatine, right? He has so much support and so much with his, if he can get you and get a normal attack, but if you can play this card, this is the card that defines your entire game when he's in it. It's that big of a deal, and as such, your opponent's going to know that this is coming. Again, the bullets for this electricity gun are his health. So any single shot your opponent can get on him, they will try to take, because that's one less nuclear bomb from Emperor Palpatine, which means snipers are going to be gunning for him all game. And that's a kind of a big deal. And we'll talk about that, because you're going to want bodyguard, you're going to want medics, you're going to want things like that with Palpatine to make sure that he's fully loaded for that. Now, he's got 3 Force options, and he's got Master of the Force too. So Palpatine has a lot of options. I think Burst of Speed is my number 1 with him right now, to be able to... Look, after he pops his 1 pip, he's probably going to die afterwards, because he's going to have only 1 health left. It's very rare that Palpatine hits all of his shots, and still survives the rest of the game. He usually dies after that, but that's okay. He returns in the next game. Somehow. Burst of Speed is a great option. Ever since that came out, it's been really great for Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine, taking these really slow Speed 1 characters, giving them at 1 turn to be able to turn into Speed 3 and to be ultra speedy boom boom, which is kind of how that works. It's incredible. It won't really matter that he gets immobilized afterwards. And that's the other thing about his 1 pip. Let me just go back. They also, when you're attacking somebody, they game an immobilized token. So even if you're having a hard time killing somebody like an enemy Jedi or an enemy commander, you can still immobilize them and keep them put. And that's a big part of the game too, is sometimes it comes down to just keeping somebody off of the objectives. Speaking of objectives, Force Push is also another viable option for Emperor Palpatine. Again, moving somebody away. If you, for example, get to where everybody's right there on the objective and there's somebody you just happen to not be able to kill, you can always just push them off, especially if you've given them immobilized tokens. It works really well with that. Anger, probably my first pick for Emperor Palpatine anytime I'm using his 1 pip, which is pretty much all the time. Again, you get a wound, you get an aim token. So that means every time he gives himself a wound with his 1 pip to make another attack, he's getting an aim token, which makes that attack a little bit stronger. Very, very good synergy with that. Anger is a great card for him for that Ultra Death Blossom bomb. Force Barrier, another potential option, especially if you're running with your Royal Guards. Your opponent might decide, hey, I keep having a hard time getting through to Emperor Palpatine. Royal Guards have gotten better. They can now, take certain upgrades that let them block even and intercept critical dice as opposed to just normal hits. Let me just go for the Royal Guard first. And all of a sudden, Force Barrier, it gives you like a double layer of protection. They can bodyguard for him. He can Force Barrier for them. It makes for a very difficult situation, and you have to really kind of go all in on one or the other. And that can be nasty, especially since he gets to get that back again each turn with Master of the Force too. Another option you might want to consider is Force Guidance, especially if you're running with multiple Imperial Royal Guards. They don't have any surge on them, and especially for the earlier rounds when the enemies aren't around and you don't have any kind of ways to get extra surge, Force Guidance could be an extra way to give them some surge. So there's a lot of different things that you can consider, but those are some of my options. Again, you can only pick 3, so it's going to depend a little bit on your list and your preferences. But for me, usually I'll do Force Push, Anger, and Burst of Speed. That's usually how I'll do it. But that's for I'm going to kind of go in early, and I'm less concerned with the Royal Guards. I'm going to try and just jump right in and Death Blossom as quickly as I can, probably by turn 3 or maybe even turn 2. It happens sometimes. It's risky, but it's super fun. For its command options, there's definitely a couple of different options that you might want to think about. I think Esteemed Leader is another way, a card that you could think about, considering that you might want more Guardian than you already have, especially if you're maybe just running one, Royal Guard and you want some Stormtroopers with medics or something like that. Esteemed Leader is an option. Aggressive Tactics is also another option. Again, if you're probably going to be running Royal Guards, Aggressive Tactics is a way to give them at least, to give them Surge and to get some Surge tokens out there. Surge isn't super needed in the Empire, but it is in certain builds, and Royal Guards are one of those units that can definitely take good advantage of it. And then Improvised Orders is always a good one if you're going to be mixing up your forces. And Palpatine is definitely some character, one of those guys who may want to do that, especially with the Dark Troopers being an option if you're going for a very heavy build and you don't want to pull them just yet. That could be an option that you look at with Improvised Orders to kind of give yourself a little bit of control. Granted, you're going to have full control at least on the 3-pip when you play that. But for the other turns, Improvised Orders can help you out with that. For some different units that you might want to run with Emperor Palpatine, obviously, let's start in the top left, Imperial Royal Guards. They're absolutely critical for running with Palpatine. He gets to give them an order for free. They also get to Guardian him. There's lots of different ways to outfit them, but they can have a lot of different options. Sometimes you'll run multiple Royal Guards. If that's the case, you're probably going to have at least one that's bare bones or are not very well upgraded, but some of their different upgrades do make them quite formidable. And of course, they also have Charge, which combos really well with what Palpatine does already for pulling the strings. He can give them a free move. Again, if you have somebody that's trying to close the gap and get into melee range or close range, fragmentation grenade range of Palpatine, then all of a sudden take your Royal Guards that are there for defense and then turn them into offense with pulling the strings. Now they can charge at your opponent and get a free attack on them, move and attack, which is always really good. Similar with Charge and pulling the strings, let's talk about Snow Troopers. Again, you're going to have some core. Snow Troopers are some of my favorite core in the game because of steady. It works really well and combos perfectly with Emperor Palpatine. They're slow, just like him, so they'll be able to stay close enough to him while moving and shooting. Pulling the strings is going to let them move and shoot again, which is super dangerous. And the more different units you have that have things like Charge, Steady, and or Relentless in your build, the more targets Palpatine will have, and you won't really know what to plan for or what to expect. If you've only got one in your whole build, then I probably know who you're going to use it on, and I can kind of position myself to make sure I have heavy cover from them. But if you've got like 3 or 4 units that are all good candidates, your opponent might not know. So that's a cool thing to think about. Imperial Dark Troopers, I talked about them just briefly. They're a heavy weapon, but they're also a trooper, which means they can be targeted by Emperor Palpatine and pulling the strings, which is a really cool thing to think about, although they can get super expensive when you start putting their different heavies on there in your personnel as well. So they can be very expensive. They can be tough to actually fit into a build with Palpatine. But if you do decide to fit them in there, I want to point out something else. Because they have that whole plotting and that slow move, and they can only do one move during their activation, you might consider using pulling the strings to give them an extra move to get them into position, because they can only do that one move during their activation, but during Palpatine's activation, they can still do another move action. Granted, it might not be as good as giving it to somebody with Charge who has a target within range, but it's still cool because how nasty they are, and they are going to get that second activation when that other order token comes out. So they're worth considering with Palpatine. Also, Palpatine might not always use burst of speed. Let's talk about Gavs. I mean, and this also works for for your LAT LE as well. But I like the Gav tank because it's an open transport, and open transport does allow you to shoot while you're a passenger. So now you turn this thing into a Tesla tank shooting lightning, measuring from the base of the tank as opposed to the base of Palpatine. So you have a range 2 Palpatine lightning bubble that comes out of this. That is really cool. Now, the risk here is that Palpatine can be shot when he's on an open transport directly. He will get treated as having heavy cover for it, but the benefits are that you've got a Tesla tank, and it's rule of cool. That's really cool. That's like super cool. However, you could take some wounds. It might impact your 1-pip. If you were ever running a Palpatine version that for some reason didn't have that 1-pip in there, maybe because you're running a different commander and you want a different 1-pip options to really play mind games with your opponent, I would consider doing the Gav tank, because you're like, yeah, I'll put him out there. Oh, you're going to take some shots? Little do you know, I don't actually have the 1-pip, so I don't care if he takes that damage, which is really a weird thing to do. But again, that's like if you're playing 4D chess with your opponent and you're really trying to mind mess with them. But also it's a transport and gets him in close to the battle really quick, which means you probably do want the 1 pip because you're going to be very close to the battle. So you can deploy him inside the tank, drop him off like first turn or maybe even second turn, and have some real fun with him. So that's a great option too. Again, vehicle transports are great for Palpatine. And I talked a little bit about bounty hunters as well. We already talked about like Arsenal 2 and things like Boba Fett or IG-88 have those. Those are great targets for pulling the strings. But I want to bring up also IG-11 because he's got Gunslinger and he's got a range 4 attack. So you got some really cool options for a free attack action. Again, Gunslinger only works off of an attack action, and since pulling the strings does say it's an attack action, that's a really cool way to get 2 shots out of IG-11 for pulling the strings, especially at long range. Very cool stuff. So that's fun. And then lastly, I do have the FX9 medical droid. Look, you've got to have some. You got to have some medical droids in this build, or any build for Palpatine, because you need some medics. Frankly, if you get a really lucky sniper shot on the first round and you just happens to be the time you roll 2 blank red dice, or something like that. Like if you take 2 wounds early on, all of a sudden his effectiveness is almost halved, and that also means that you don't have good luck that game. So you need ways to kind of combat the bad dice roll. And that happens. You've got so much protection with Palpatine. You've got red defense dice. You've got surge for defense, which is also really good. You also have bodyguard, and then you have the way to protect your bodyguards too. But every once in a while, there's going to be some damage that sneaks through. So having at least 1 medical droid, but I would recommend having at least 2, typically, is going to help make sure that your plan, again, if your whole plan hinges on that 1 pip, which a lot of Palpatine plans do, you got to have some insurance policies for that, and that's the way to do it. So make sure at least 1 or 2 of your core have the FX9 medical droid to kind of ensure that Palpatine can get the job done, because he will get the job done. All right, guys, that has been our discussion for Emperor Palpatine for Star Wars Legion. I want to hear some of your thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Also, check the links in the video description. We still have that painting contest, that holiday painting contest going on in the Discord. If you're not going to enter it, you can at least go check it out, see some of the awesome paint jobs that people are sharing, and I'd love to see some of your holiday-themed paint submissions. Winner will become an Artisan of Fate, which is a highly coveted Discord role. And honestly, you can share paint jobs even if they don't quite fit the theme. They may not win, but still, they might get featured because we'll be doing a video that will kind of talk about all of the different paint jobs and things like that. So, fun stuff. Love to hear from you guys. Let's keep the discussion going. I will talk to you later. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are out of this world and help make this channel possible. I will talk to you later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. And always wash your socks.